it's me, Lucy. The title of Jesus we are looking at this week is Servant. In our story today, Jesus has one last important lesson to give his disciples before he dies. He wants them to serve one another, and he is the example. Jesus is called servant even in the Old Testament. In Isaiah 42:1, it says, "Here is my servant, the one I support. He is the one I chose, and I am pleased with him." How can Jesus be both master and servant? It's all about being humble. Jesus shows them how to be a servant by doing one of the dirtiest jobs of the day. Let's take a listen.
It's nearly time for the Passover feast, Jesus told two of his disciples. Go into the city. You will see a man carrying a water jar. Follow him to the house and say to the owner of the house, "The teacher needs to eat the Passover meal here." The owner of the house will show you an upstairs room. You can get the food ready for us to eat together there. The disciples did what Jesus said. They found the house and the upper room, and they talked to the owner of the house. Then they got everything ready for the feast. Jesus and the other disciples arrived at supper time. "I'm glad I can celebrate Passover with all of you tonight," Jesus said. "I've been looking forward to this very much." During this meal, Jesus held up some bread and a cup from the table. "This bread is like my body," he said, "and this drink is like my blood. I will be giving them for you. Remember me whenever you eat this bread and drink this cup." Jesus was telling his disciples that soon he was going to die for the sins of the world, but they didn't understand. Then after supper, Jesus had one more important lesson for his disciples. He got up from the table and took off his robe. He poured water into a big bowl and tied a towel around his waist. What was Jesus doing? The disciples didn't know. Then Jesus knelt in front of the disciples one by one and washed their feet. Usually, a servant did a dusty, dirty job like washing the feet of all the dinner guests. "Jesus, what are you doing?" Peter asked. Jesus finished his work. Then he said, "You all call me your Lord and your teacher, and those names are true. So if your Lord and teacher has washed your feet like a servant, then you must also serve one another. When I washed your feet tonight, I gave you an example to follow, and you will be blessed if you do this."
In Bible times, walking in sandals on dusty roads gave people dirty feet. Some families had servants to cook and to serve them meals, and those same servants often washed the feet of the guests who came to dinner. One of Jesus' names in the Bible is servant. A good servant does what is good for others. Kings often had many servants. Jesus, God's Son, is the King of Kings, but instead of people serving him, Jesus served people. He left behind his beautiful home in heaven and came to live with people on earth. He taught about God and he healed the sick. Then he gave his life for the sins of the world so the people who love him can live with God in heaven forever. After supper, Jesus and his disciples went out to a garden where Jesus prayed. Then the temple leaders, who did not like Jesus, sent soldiers to arrest him. Jesus could have stopped them with just one word, but he didn't. He knew what was happening was part of God's plan to save his people. I can't wait till next week when we get to hear the amazing story of Easter. Bye, friends!
Dear God, I want to do what Jesus said. I want to serve others like he did. Please show me how I could be a good helper. Amen.